Let's talk about Pluto in Aquarius and how to bring more light into your practice now that Pluto is in a new sign. Now that Pluto's in Aquarius and it's at the very beginning, we have the ability, the opportunity, and the chance to start over in a lot of different ways. Pluto rules over the underworld. It has to do with our ancestral inheritances and how we're practicing with our ancestors. It rules over things like exchanges in business, how we make our money from other people. Sometimes people associate it with taxes, which, yeah. There's also the association of when we exchange with our intimate partners. Now, Pluto, because it is very multifaceted, and in my opinion, very foundational for a lot of different areas of life, and because it takes so long to transit through one sign, 18-ish years, when it starts over, we don't necessarily get a clean slate fully and totally, but we do have the opportunity to begin anew in the areas that were pre-mentioned about Pluto. If you're wondering about this in your personal chart and you're getting familiar with astrology, you can check out your Pluto placement, what house it's in, what it's ruled by, your 8th house, the house ruler, any placements there, and then also Scorpio, the house it's in, and any placements that are ruled by Scorpio. Indirectly, you could look at your Mars and the house and the sign ruler as well, as Mars is one of the rulers of Scorpio, not just Pluto, but it will be more directly Pluto in the other mentioned places. So bringing in more light, let's talk a little bit about that. Because we're at the beginning, we are at a fresh start. Now, Pluto started its transit into Aquarius over a year and a half ago. But with an 18-year transit, this is still very much the beginning. Especially because we're in a Pluto retrograde right now. We're unbinding some of those contracts that have to do with Pluto areas. Now, when I say unbinding contracts, we're getting out of situations. We are no longer exchanging with a person, place, family, or thing. We get to call death. Love you, death. We get to call death on some things. And one of the things that Spirit has had me working on in my practice recently with this Pluto energy is calling death, again, revere and love you, death. If you do call on death, just remember it's a very serious thing. So if you're new, because I know I talk to a lot of different experience of people with their practices, so just a heads up. Not to give you the spookies or the scaries about it, but yeah, it's a serious thing. But you could call death to the shadows of what has already happened. Pluto is the ruler of the underworld. And in the underworld, it's pretty dark. It's pretty shadowed. And honestly, there isn't anything wrong with that. I personally would call myself a shadow practitioner among many, 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 many other things. It's definitely not the only thing that I would call myself. I do work with the shadows, and I find that they're a great place to be, especially when it comes to different spiritual gifts and different sorts of practices that can't necessarily be done the exact same way in the light, but we'll leave that in the night. When it comes to calling in more light with Pluto, again, if you call death on those shadows that have been around you, maybe you're looking at this previous era of Pluto in Capricorn, and you're saying to yourself, wow, that was really hard. I noticed that pattern while Pluto was in Capricorn of kind of what my family was going through, or what did I inherit from my ancestors that I had to focus on. You could also look at where Capricorn is in your chart and see kind of where Pluto would have been passing over, the house and what is in Capricorn. Yep. But go back over and see, I wonder what shadows are still sticking around from that era and that energy and that phase of me. And if you wanted to call death to those shadows, we're in a new era. One thing about Pluto is that we don't get out of one binding without having another one to be bound up in. There's always rules. Okay, Pluto. We're always exchanging with something. Otherwise, that is called death, right? And even then, it's an exchange with death. It's another story, but we're moving on. So if you do find yourself looking back at the previous era and calling things to an end, because we're at the beginning, calling the shadows to an end so there can be more light, because we're at the beginning of Pluto in Aquarius, generally speaking of those 18 years, that means you're setting yourself up for the next 16 to 18 years while Pluto's in Aquarius. That would be the process of how to get that more like clean slate and start over in this chapter, especially if you've been doing a lot of work over the previous year and a half to reap what has been sown for many, many years while Pluto was in Capricorn. Death work is definitely work, and gratitude, reverence, and love to you, the death workers, because you know what? That work, it calls on you very differently than a lot of other kinds of work. So if you have been a death worker or are a death worker, have been at any point in your life, then gratitude, reverence, and love to you, because you know what? It takes a lot to be able to stand in that. So another thing to note before we are done with the video and done explaining about the shadows of Pluto and bringing in more light, transits, they compound on each other throughout the entire sign. So with Pluto having been in Capricorn for those 16 and a half years, we compounded on one thing the whole entire time. It was over and over and over and over. It got layered and layered and layered. Now, the retrogrades of Pluto, they help to kind of like clear out some of the stuff from those layers so it's not so dense and so heavy. And right now we are in a retrograde with Pluto in Aquarius, which can help to unbind some of the shadows from the previous era, bring in some new stuff. And if you're focusing on this now, I want to kind of look at the bigger picture of when Pluto kind of gets to the end of Aquarius. If you're focusing on this now, allowing yourself to clear out some of the old habits, old characters, old charter, old, then you're going to have, by the time that you get to the end of Pluto in Aquarius, a much lighter ride instead of it being so dense and so dark from the Pluto and Capricorn time. Because it compounds, that means also light will be woven in, the clearing of the shadows of previous and light being woven in. Probably because it's Pluto and it's partially ruled by Saturn in Aquarius, there's gonna be more layers of let me clear out this darkness so I can bring in more light. So it is. So it is. And then once we get to Pluto in Pisces, things will be, a little bit different. But for now, that's what I have for you. If you wanted to look at your 11th house also, because Pluto's in Aquarius right now, and anything that's in Aquarius, you could also look at your Saturn and your Uranus. Those are going to be places where maybe there's some darkness, some residual darkness, and you can focus on what is the new stuff that I want in these areas of Aquarius, 11th house, Saturn, and Uranus. And if you figure out the new stuff, sometimes you can see what shadows need to go. Sometimes you already know what shadows need to go, but if you need help kind of identifying them, that's a process. So gratitude, reverence, and love to you. Keep up the brew that you do. I for sure will too. I've been brewing and doing, I feel like, a lot recently, so keep it up. And I'll talk to you soon. Also true.